Well, good morning, everybody. My name is Brad. I'm one of the pastors here at Copper Hills. I'm glad to greet you today, those of you in the video venue as well. I noticed Matt and I wearing the same size of shirt, but the muscle distribution is a little different. You noticed that too? Yeah. I want to tell you a little bit about the shirts in a little bit. But first of all, I want to invite you to something really important. If Copper Hills is new to you, or maybe you've been here a number of weeks, maybe through the summer, 3 times or so a year, we do something called Copper Hills 101. And what it is it's an introduction to who Copper Hills is, what our beliefs are, what our vision, our mission is, what we believe Jesus is asking us to be in this culture and in this world. And that is coming up on September the 25th. It's a Thursday night, starting at 7 o'clock. If you register on our website, we would love to have you here. It's really your meeting. It's a Q&A format where you come with your questions of what you would like to know about the church you're a part of, or maybe considering being part of. And so if you're interested in that, go to our website. We would love to see you that evening. Well, as best I can recall, because it's a long time ago, his name was Mr. Thiessen. He was the principal of my elementary school, but I think he was only principal for 1 year, as I recall. But that 1 year would leave a lasting impact on my life, and he has no idea he had that impact. The impact happened on a sports field that was right adjacent to the campus of our small elementary school. My favorite subject, like a lot of kids at that age, is recess or lunch hour, right? And the game of choice at recess was soccer. And the way this worked, like you'll be familiar, is a couple of people self-selected as captains, and then we would all line up in front of them, and they would pick the people they wanted on their team, one side and the other. I was always picked last. I was the leftover, that I wasn't wanted on the team, not because I wasn't liked, not because I didn't have my place in the community of the school, but you see, I was a pipsqueak. I was small in stature in elementary school. But that wasn't even the big thing. I wore glasses. I had horrible vision. My glasses resembled the bottom of Coke bottle bottoms. And that created this problem. I could not coordinate my eyes and my feet. First of all, I couldn't see till the ball was really close to me, that it was close to me, and I couldn't react quick enough. And then secondly, I could not dribble the ball, because where I would kick, the ball wasn't, but my eyes told me it was, and I was abysmal at the game of soccer. So if you wanted somebody to help you win the game, you weren't picking me. And so I was leftover. I was the last guy. Till one day, I think Mr. Thiessen saw that I was often the last picked, if not always the last picked. And I didn't see it happening, but he walked across that sports field to where the 2 captains once again were about to pick their team, and he stepped right in the middle of it and he said, "We're changing things today. Today, Donnie, who also was not picked first, is going to be one of the captains." And then he looked at me and he said, "And Bradley is going to be the other captain. And both of them are starting at center." I couldn't believe it. He noticed me. He saw me. How did he even know my name? How was he aware that I was Bradley? I was so honored to be picked by him, but more than that, I was honored to be noticed. And then for him to walk across a field and to pay personal interest in my life. And so it was my turn to pick. I might be blind, but I'm not a chump. I did what every other captain did. I picked to win. But that day, somebody else was the last pick, not me. And for some reason, that simple experience of being noticed by somebody when you think you're not noticed, for have somebody walk across a room or across a sports field or across a restaurant and pay personal attention, leaves a lasting impact in our lives. That's what happens when you're noticed and someone takes interest in you. That's just the power of that. And nobody in human history has been better at that than Jesus Christ. Nobody. Nobody has taken the level of noticing or the level of interest. Nobody but him. And he's done that with each one of us as well. He had this uncanny ability to notice people who were on the margins, who were the last picked, who were kind of the leftover, who had the Coke bottle bottom glasses. And he noticed them. And he paid attention to them, and he would walk across a mountain pass or across a lake or a temple court or into enemy territory to be involved in their lives. Somehow or other, he found a tender, loving worshiper of God, clothed in the worn, weary prostitute. Somehow or other, Jesus found a faithful apprentice in an unknown fisherman named Simon. Somehow or other, he noticed a hidden philanthropist in the body of a despised tax collector named Matthew. Somehow or other, his eyes were open to the deep longing of the soul of a man whose moments from dying next to him on a cross. Nobody, not a single human being who's ever walked the face of this earth, had greater capacity and longing to notice and be involved in their lives, to be interested in them than Jesus. What I find so striking is that even when he is faced with one of those pivotal moments in his life, where his attention understandably would be on himself and looking after himself and taking care of his emotional place, because even the last weeks of his life where he's about to walk his own personal green mile, and he's going to walk the dead man walking journey, do you know where his attention is? It's on noticing others. I don't know if, I've not been there, but if I was to project myself, I think I'm thinking about dying. I think I'm thinking about the ones I'm leaving behind. I think I'm thinking about how excruciating is that going to be? And then if you're in that place because of injustice and being misunderstood, aren't you defending yourself? Aren't you stepping out and going, that's wrong? And then if you're the God of the universe, don't you call 10,000 angels to rescue you? Are you actually thinking about anybody but yourself? Jesus is. That's what Jesus does. On his way to death row, we're told in the scripture that there's a series of incidents that Jesus has on his final journey from Capernaum in the North Sea of Galilee down to Jerusalem. Probably a week or so is what it took for him to get down there. And one of the people that records those incidents is a guy by the name of Luke, Dr. Luke. He's one of the 4 biographies we have in our Bible. And he has such an interesting approach to it. We're told at the very beginning of what he writes, this won't come up, but this is what he writes to introduce what he's about to tell everybody in his biography. He writes, many have undertaken to draw up an account of the things that have been fulfilled among us, just as they were handed down to us by those who from the first were eyewitnesses and servants of Jesus. These were real people that walked with Jesus. With this in mind, since I myself have carefully investigated everything from the beginning, I too decided to write an orderly account to you, most excellent Theophilus, a friend of his. Some speculate that he was the high priest following Caiaphas, so that you may know the certainty of the things that you have been taught. Now, for some reason, I woke up in the middle of the night this last night, and I had this picture come to my mind of Luke sitting this morning in front of one of the hosts of our Sunday morning political talk shows. You know, Meet the Press or Face the Nation, that kind of thing. I don't know why, but I envisioned the host turning to him and say, "So, Dr. Luke, you have recently written a book, been published. It's got some traction to it. And in this book, you carefully investigated the things of Jesus. And you wrote them down, and you have let us know about those. You talked to dozens of eyewitnesses, and you probably, through those stories, got to know who Jesus is. And so I've got a question for you. You've assumed, and I'll go with you on this one, you've assumed he is the Jewish Messiah, the Savior of the world. But I'm curious, why did he come? Let's assume, I'll give you that he came, and he is the Messiah, but why did he come? I envision Luke saying, well, I deal with that in chapter 19 of my book, Buy My Book. In chapter 19, Jesus has just had a conversation with a treasonous tax collector. And after the course of that conversation, Jesus ends it and tells us why he came. And this is what he says. He says, "For I have come to seek and to save those that are lost." That's it. Now, seeking, that word isn't just I saw they were lost. Nope. It's I engaged myself in their lives. I was interested in them. I did what I thought I could do in that moment because I thought I could bring hope to their lives. So I didn't just see, I sought them. That means I was engaged in actively looking for them. I wanted to know them. I wanted to be part of their lives. That's what it means. And so, host, that's the why. Well, what exactly did he mean with that? I can see Luke saying, well, what he meant was that God noticed that humans had drifted from him. That as we described a few weeks ago, the margins of the paper of life, God's been pushed to the margins, and the void that's created has been filled with anything other than God. And God noticed that. And God noticed this, that when that happens, when drift happens, drifters make drifting mistakes. And they make drifting choices. And those drifting choices sometimes lead them into a place where they can't find their way back anymore. And they're lost. They don't want to be lost. They desperately want to be found and want to know if there's really a God that he can lead me to filling that void I've filled with something else, with himself. And when God noticed it, he realized they have no way back themselves. This is going to take some outside intervention. And then he took interest in them. He walked across the universe and history and came into this world to find the lost and to help them if they would want that. His great love allowed for choice, and so that's what it means. It means God noticed. God took a walk to us. He took interest in us and then became the source of hope for us. And that grand idea of taking notice and taking interest and modeling and offering real hope is what the eyewitnesses said Jesus did as well. Can imagine Luke going on and saying, hey, look, that was chapter 19 of my book. Can I tell you about chapter 17 and 18? Here's what happened. The eyewitnesses told me that as Jesus left Capernaum, at some point he ran into 10 people who had a chronic disease called leprosy, which in his culture they thought was contagious. It really was a neurological disease where the outer appendages, the toes and the fingers and in the feet and the hands go numb. And then there's an injury that happens, and the injury isn't treated properly, and an infection takes hold, and the only way to save the life is to amputate body parts. And he ran into those 10 people, and as I interviewed them, they were not even calling out to Jesus. But in chapter 17 of my book, in verse 14, it says, when he saw them, that's the same word, I came to seek and to save. He didn't just go, oh, there's 10 guys that are sick. No, that means he engaged in their world. He stepped into the world. And this story ends so wonderfully because all 10 are healed by him. That's what taking interest looked in that case. And then from there, travel down a little further south, and a few miles down the road, the eyewitnesses told me that Jesus came across a young, uber-religious influencer in his culture. A guy that obviously had made a reasonable amount of money. His YouTube channel had done quite well. He'd monetized that. But whatever it was, he was quite wealthy, and he was really a good guy. He was religiously true to his faith, and yet there's something desperate in his life. And so he comes running to Jesus, and he falls at Jesus' feet, thinking probably, Jesus, you have something for me. And he recited for Jesus the things that he had done, the religious rules he had followed, and yet there's something missing. And then when Jesus sees this young man, he reminds him of how badly he's missing something in his life. But he doesn't just bark it out. We're told this. One of the eyewitnesses reported to Luke that this is what happened. In Luke 17, it says, Jesus looked at him and he loved him. Didn't know him, but loved him. Saw the plight the man was in, saw his good heart, saw his longing, and realized the one thing that was wrong was he had misaligned his desires of his life and shoved God to the margins. And Jesus lovingly but clearly tells him this is what has happened. And then, as the eyewitnesses, maybe this guy himself told Luke, I went away because what Jesus had offered in love, I couldn't handle right then. Oh, how I hope that he rethought that. But Jesus sees, he looks, he notices, and he takes interest. Just a little further south, he comes across a group of overly aggressive parents who really want to get Jesus' autograph or want Jesus' blessing on their kids. And Jesus' handlers, apparently, as Luke found out, tell the parents, leave Jesus alone. You know, he's an important guy. He's got to get to Jerusalem. All this stuff is going. And this is Jesus' response. In Luke 18, it says, and Jesus called the children to himself. The verse just before it says Jesus was indignant. He's ticked off. He's upset. And then he calls the children to himself and he said, let the little children come to me and do not hinder them, for the kingdom of God belongs to such as these. Come on, kids. I know in our culture, you're marginalized. You're not only supposed to be not seen, you're not supposed to be heard. You actually are a burden economically to the family till you get to your teenage years, and now you can contribute economically, and that's what we'll have you do. You are our DNA workforce. You don't have much value in our culture than that, but you do to me. And I noticed that. And I have taken interest in you. A few hours later, Jesus and his group take a right turn, and they head to the city of Jericho. They're now just 15 miles away from the city of Jerusalem. And I think Luke might have recorded something like this, that I was told by one of the eyewitnesses that Jesus entered the city, and as soon as he did, a street beggar started calling out to him. Yeah, a street beggar. somebody that's easily ignored, easily on the margins, somebody who just wants some stuff and he's going to use it for himself. He probably has a ton of resources already himself. He's just trying to add to what he has. No one would ever think that of street people, would they? But he keeps calling, and Jesus' handlers again try to shut him down and be quiet, and he just sees that as a challenge, I guess, or desperate. And he calls out to Jesus once again, and this is what it says in Luke 18, and the story is also told in Matthew 20. It says, Matthew 20, Jesus stopped. He's got to get to Jerusalem. But he stops because he noticed. He noticed this guy. And it says that he ordered the man brought to him. Matthew records it a little differently than Luke. He says there were two guys, one or two, it doesn't matter. This is the point. Jesus had compassion on them. He had compassion on them. He noticed and took interest. He goes just a little further into the city. And there he meets a guy that prompted him at the end of it to say, the Son of Man has come to seek and to save those who are lost. This is how that story unfolds as Luke investigated it. It says in Luke 19, it says this, Jesus entered Jericho and was passing through. A man was there by the name of Zacchaeus. He was a chief tax collector and was wealthy. Now, don't think IRS agent. That's too vanilla. That's too bland. The way the Roman tax system worked is similar to ours in one sense, in that they collected taxes from their citizens to pay for the army, to pay for civic improvements, social programs, that kind of thing, and they taxed their citizens to do that. However, they did it differently than we, though we actually considered this at one point in our history. They privatized it. They would have wealthy entrepreneurs and business people who would bid to be able to collect taxes in a region. So let's say the region where Jesus was in Palestine, some guy in Rome who had the dough to put up the money up front would say, I think I can collect X number of dollars from those citizens. He would bid on that, and if he was a successful bidder, he now would make his money back by collecting tax. He would hire locals, citizens of the country, to gather the taxes and send it to his bank account. Anything that they gathered beyond what they had committed to him was theirs to keep. It was a cesspool of corruption. Thank goodness we don't have privatized tax collection. And one of those guys that had been hired by a Roman businessman was a guy by the name of Zacchaeus, and he had quite the enterprise going. It appears he had hired some other people, and this is who he was. He was loathed by his fellow citizens. He couldn't even live in the city of Jericho. He had to have a place with walls around it outside the city. He was kicked out of the synagogue. If you got too close to him, you were considered unclean. And so you pushed the guy to the end. He was a treasonous person. The Jewish religion has like circles of sinfulness. Like the high priest is at the middle, and then priests, and then ethnically Jewish, DNA Jewish people, and then people who by choice become Jews, and then Gentiles, and then sinners, and then tax collectors. Irredeemably bad people. And that's who Jesus comes in contact with. But he wants something. He wanted to see who Jesus was. But because he was short in stature, I get that, he could not see over the crowd, so he really is a bright guy. He runs ahead, climbs up a sycamore tree to see him since Jesus was coming that way. And then the dramatic climax of the story. Jesus reached the spot, and here it is. He took notice of him. I don't know what caught his attention hidden in a sycamore tree. They're broad leaves, and you can hide in there, but somehow Jesus notices him and says, Zacchaeus, come down immediately. I'm about to let you have it. Like Jesus was the guy that turned to some religious hypocrites and said, you brood of vipers, you snakes, you children of hell. Remember, this guy's beyond the pale of redemption. Let him have it, Jesus. To which Jesus says, I must stay at your house today. Jesus notices. Jesus takes interest. So he came down at once. And he welcomed Jesus gladly because nobody else would ever want to go to his house. And everybody saw this and said, that is not the way this should go. All the people saw this and began to mutter, he's gone to be the guest of a sinner beyond redemption. And then we lose track of what happened to the story. We don't know what happened inside the walls of that little large gated home. We don't know. It's never recorded. I think Luke, even in his investigation, maybe he sat down with Zacchaeus and said, Zacchaeus, what happened in the conversation? What did Jesus say to you? Zacchaeus won't even tell him. Nobody knows. But something happened. Because the next scene we have is in verse 8, it says, but Zacchaeus stood up and said to the Lord, Lord, look, Lord, here and now I give half my possessions to the poor, and if I've cheated anybody out of anything, I'll pay back 4 times the amount. If you're an accountant, that does not make sense. So you give away half your stuff, now you've got half left. How in all the world do you give back 4 times what you took from other people unless you were an incredible investor and multiplied over and over again what you had? The math doesn't work. It's really what the writers are saying. He gave everything away. He kept nothing for himself. What happened in that room, in that home, that created that? Jesus said to him, today, salvation, rescue, the lost have been found, has come to this house because this man too is the son of Abraham. For the Son of Man he came to seek and to save those that are lost. That is the impact. Not on some little kid playing soccer because he's the leftover and last picked. It's because our world is filled with people who think they're last picked and they're leftovers. And they've done things that God's probably pushed them to the outer fringes beyond the pale of redemption and reconciliation. And those are the people that Jesus comes to in you and me. To be like him to them so they will see who he is. So they too can be redeemed and brought back and loved and cared for and find hope in Jesus Christ. Nobody does it like Jesus. And if we're honest with ourselves, nobody's done it to us like Jesus has done this for us. And here's the danger. That has created circles of comfort where I hang out with people who see it the way I see it, believe what I do, and we have this wonderful love fest together. And that's good. It's just not how Jesus did it and does it. He noticed us, walked across a universe and eternity, and came to take interest in us. So how do we do it? Well, we say this around here a lot, and I'm going to say it again today. You do not live where you live, go to school where you go to school, work where you work, play where you play. Because the house was a good deal in the right neighborhood and a killer ensuite. It fits within our budget, and man, we've always wanted to live in that neighborhood. I hope that's true. But that's not why you live there. The job you have, well, man, I've worked my whole life to take advantage of where I am today, and the job fits me perfectly. I'm so grateful for that. Or, man, I'm grateful for the salary and the benefits package. it's great for my family, or this is what I went to school for, and man, I got my dream job. I hope that's true. But that's not why. It's not why you're in that job. The school you go to. And I hope the degree program you're in absolutely fulfills your dream. I hope the school is safe for your kids, and I hope it's a wonderful community that you experience. And you picked it in part for that reason, but that's not why. And the team you play on, the pickup basketball game, I thank goodness it's helping you be fit, and it's a joyful thing to do. And the hot yoga, oh my goodness, the hot yoga. But it's not why. You live where you live, work where you work, go to school where you go to school, play where you play. Because the world desperately needs to know that Jesus notices them. And he's noticing them through you and me. And then we need the courage to step out of our comfort circle and get into the zone of the unknown and just take interest in them. Find out their story. Find out what makes them tick. Find out what their history is. Find out what their dreams are. Just get engaged. Look for a need and meet it. Be reckless. Like Jesus has been reckless with us. I'm so proud. Can I be that? Of some folks in our church who have aligned their lives around it. I think of Ron, who every month has Walkabout Wednesday. Wednesday morning, he wakes up and says, God, who do you want to connect me with today? And he gets in his car, or he stays home, talks to his neighbors, or just a week or so, maybe it's a month now, he got in his car and he just felt prompted to drive to a certain cigar shop. And there he met a guy by the name of Matthew, a guy who's 20-something-year-old trying to start a church in the West Valley. And Ron just bumped into him. And they started a conversation. And Ron heard his story. And now Ron's helping him reach people through some of the gifts and skills that Ron had. Take notice and take interest. We all can do this. I think of my friend Jim, loves golf. But Fridays are sacred golf days. He does not golf with his buddies. He goes to the club as a single so that whoever is put with him is God's choice for who's put with him. And he spends the next 4 hours with that person, taking notice and taking interest and loving that person. I'm proud of guys like that. I think of a couple in our church who have chose to stay in the turmoil of the public school system because they love Jesus and they love their students. And they have said, we are going to be one shining light in this school. As hard as it is, as much as it pushes against our morals and our values, we will not take the light of Christ out of this school. And I'm proud of that. I'm proud of the guy who signed up to be a chaplain in the state prison system and has gone through the rigors of all of that preparation so he can go and be present with people who are desperately marginalized by their own choice. And he's just noticing and taking interest. All of us can do this. But will we do it? Jesus turned to a group of people who thought they couldn't do it, were marginalized themselves, and said, you're the light of this world. That's who you are. You are the salt of this whole world. So go. Be bold. Be courageous. Take notice. Take interest. One of the guys that hung out with Jesus that frankly struggled with his own ego and who he was, and oftentimes spoke before he even thought what he was saying. A guy by the name of Peter. late in his life, when his life is under duress at the very least, probably threatened. He writes this, he says, revere Christ as Lord, and to always be prepared, in season and out, to give a reason for your hope, but do it with gentleness and respect. Take notice, take interest, be a conduit of hope in our world, and see where Jesus leads that and you. I invite you to stand with me and pray. Jesus, I'm so grateful. No, I'm really grateful that you noticed our plight as human beings. And rather than scold us or even start over again, you noticed us and you walked across a universe because you loved us. And for you, taking interest in us would mean giving away your life for us. And you did that. Jesus, you know we're so inclined as human beings to look in the mirror rather than out the window. We're so inclined to take care of us and our stuff. And it's just the brokenness of who we are. But I wonder what you would do in our city, our neighborhood, our schools, our places of business, the places where we recreate, if a group of people, maybe just one, noticed, walked across the gym floor, or walked across the cubicle farm, or walked across the street and took interest in somebody. Would you use that? Do that in us for the fame of your great name, Jesus.